Hi, this is Calvin Cox. It's Thursday night, 8:37 p.m. It is May 23rd, 2013. And I've been trying to put together a talk on reducing, keeping the net gain on thermal, the heat, excuse me, the heat gain, the net thermal net heat gain equaling 0 per day is what you pretty much want to accomplish, but I've been working on a model and everything of a home and things you could do. It takes a lot of time to do that, and I got to put together a talk. I'm trying to ferret out some key points and thinking why this is that and that's the other. And trying to do some research. It's taking longer to put together than I thought. I want it to really, come together in a way that's very understandable and comprehensible, and it's just not going to be an easy talk. But anyway, so I shifted gears, and tonight I want to talk about earthquakes. It's really important. I did some research this evening, and the main thing that caused me to want to do a talk about earthquakes is an apparent something that cannot be explained between what I read, which was that if you go 10 miles down, and this is on the internet, if you go drill 10 miles down, which is 1 mile is 5,280 feet, so 10 miles would be 52,800 feet, that there's so much heat and pressure at that depth that it says that rocks pretty much become like kind of more plastic, because the heat and pressure is so much. It would be kind of like if you take a rock now, you can't do anything to it, you can't hurt it, but down there it can actually like deform. I got an idea from reading this, but what I ran across was that this evening was that there's basically three classifications of let's just read this. Let me see. The focal depth, where an earthquake, the type of earthquake that's down in the ground. Okay, we're not talking a surface slipping. Something way down into the ground. What they call the focal depth is where an earthquake is occurring. And the epicenter is on the surface of the ground. The hypocenter is down in the ground, and however many miles, that's where the actual earthquake begins. Now, the focal depth, 0 to 43.5 miles, is considered a shallow earthquake. A focal depth between 43.5 and 186 miles is an intermediate earthquake. And the focal depth between 186 miles and 435 miles is considered a deep earthquake. Now, I had no idea that those earthquakes could go down that far. In my mind, the problem with making all this make sense is, how is it that one thing can say at 10 miles, okay, everything becomes kind of plasticky, but you can still have an earthquake hundreds of miles deep? I mean, first of all, I understand that plates kind of shift, but if you have something that far down in, you would think there would be so much heat and pressure, things would just kind of ooze together like semi-melted cheese and would fill any voids, so that there wouldn't be, areas that could shift around, basically. How can semi-melted, hot, gooey, plasticky cheese kind of cause an earthquake? I don't understand that. That to me, that the two things don't jive. I can understand things being a few miles down in the ground. They're still solid. They still, when they slip, they could create whatever. But so I don't know. But I do know that it would be, the Earth that we live on. We're always finding out science, and further you go, having to do with weather, having to do with earthquakes. You're always finding out something new, and anything you can do to improve your understanding and learning may lead to newer advances in early warning, understanding certain geological structures. There could very well be things down way, way, way down in the earth we just have not seen. We can't understand. The most we've basically done is send sound waves through the earth. Well, that tells you a very limited amount. And so my feeling is we need to take an advanced step to go down into the earth the best and the most that anybody has ever done. I think I read that the Russians have drilled to 17,000 feet down. I mean, no, not 17,000 feet. They have drilled to 17 miles. Okay? So that's a very long way. But it's just drilled. They have not actually gone down there and looked. Nobody's done that. So I was proposing a wild idea. Why wouldn't you get somebody like Bill Gates or somebody else has a lot of money, and or maybe even start a fund publicly on the airwaves or radios to start a thing where Americans contribute to doing a deep boring. My idea is that you would take on the surface here, you would start a hole about 22 feet in diameter, and there's a reason for that. It's because I would say you would start at 22. I got to thinking about this. How big would you want to make it? The problem is, as you get going any amount of depth in there, there's what's called sidewall pressure, which is pressure going this way. It's everything here, because so much pushes that way. If it's all solid rock, hey, that's fine and dandy, but you run into layers of sand, gravel, slate, solid rock, all kinds of layers as you go down. And the further you get way down, if you were getting about 10 miles, the sidewall and the pressure and everything would get rather intense. So somewhere not too far from the surface, you would have to start having reinforced steel and poured concrete to create a very solid and super strong wall on this thing, so it wouldn't cave in on you. And at depth, 10 miles or however many miles, geologists could tell you what sidewall and calculate how thick it would need to be. You're probably going to be getting into a lot of really good high-grade rebar, and maybe even a foot thick of super high-pressure concrete. Once you get going way down in there, I think the coolest thing could be is when, as you were advancing down in the borehole, I'm a cabinet maker, and so oftentimes we have to bore a hole through 3/4 plywood or something. We use what's called a hole saw, and it's just it looks like this. It's got teeth right here, and the drill's back here, and it spins. Well, imagine remember, you're doing a lot of things. You're not only, as you bore down this hole, you're looking at the surface of the wall. Geologists could get there and they could take pictures. You could have automated cameras following this whole thing as you drill down through it. And bore samples, like a super large hole saw. A person standing down here could take a compass and mark on where they're going to drill with a sort of hole saw, mark on the top, align the all the drill sections, you know, like maybe a 2-foot round piece you would drill at a time, and then one by it and on around, and you would label them, orient them with a compass, mark on the top, use something to mark, you know, where north is, and then number them in order and where the start point of the order. So when all the, you know, cut, like if you're cutting a borehole here, and then one next to it, and then one next to it, and you can imagine if you had a 22-foot diameter hole, you would have boreholes, you know, all over the place. And so you would want to number them, you know, like the first one would be the northernmost, and then have a sequence where you would number them, you know, on and on. So when you get them back up to the surface, you can align them up in the order they were, and the geologists can study them and break them apart, take samples, and on do all kinds of studies as you go all the way down. Now this would take like a super long time to drill and bore all these. It would take special hole cutters. I don't know if you could build a hole cutter 10, 15 feet deep that could take one continuous, and then you would probably have to experiment with that. But go layer, you know, by layer, and haul them all up. The reason this thing has to be 22 foot in diameter, think about, you're going to need electric cables to be run down there, and once you get going real deep, your cables are going to have to get bigger and bigger and bigger. You're going to have to pump air down in there, and you're going to need fresh air being pumped in down at the bottom wherever they're doing the drilling. You need to change that air down there all the time. So you're going to need a suction tube pulling old air out, and because if they hit pockets of methane or whatever they run into down there, you always want that air changing. So fresh air is going to have to be pumped in on the other side as the dirty old air is being sucked out. So you have electrical line. Then you're going to have your air intakes. So let's see, we got electrical. We have air. You're going to need an elevator system, and you're probably going to need two. So one elevator system would be on one wall and one on the other. So it'd probably look something like this, a 22 diameter. Let's go ahead and consider you're going to have a wall thickness of 1 foot. You might as well figure that. I guess as you get further and further down in the hole, it required more steel and more concrete. Then you would probably hollow out the side walls to allow it to wider and still keep an inner diameter close to the same. But 1 foot, 1 foot is 22 minus 1 foot here and 1 foot here would be 20, and then divide that in half. So from this point to here would be 10 feet. Okay, and then you would need to have steel anchored on the walls, a special track that the elevator platform would ride up and down. One elevator platform would have to be much heavier duty to handle carrying down steel, and then concrete and water. You're probably going to have to mix the concrete way down at depth. You got to carry concrete forms down there. Let me see, carry steel, water, forms, concrete forms. All the time you're going to be carrying people. Okay, scientists. Workers. You're going to have toilet. People got to go to the bathroom down there a couple of 1,000 feet down or a mile down where you go, oh, I got to go to the bathroom. Well, you going to ride a whole mile up? Go to the toilet? No. You're going to stay down in the hole. You got to, urinate and go poo-poo down there. So you're going to have the little toilet facility, and that's going to have to be hauled up and dumped periodically. So toilet, all kinds. You're going to need a microwave oven down there to heat up people's lunch, I know I would want one. Oven. You're going to need drilling equipment. You're going to need automated camera. Automated cameras, you're probably going to need to have several down in there, probably about 6 or 7 as you're, wherever you're drilling at the time. You're going to need a lot of cameras showing all the time. You need the lighting down there. Lots of lighting. Good quality lighting. Automated cameras. And they would have cables run up the wall to, recording everything live in real time. And then when you bring all the samples up, they're going to go to a facility and be stored. And you could think how quickly that would fill up with samples. And then lighting, let me see, and then you're going to need lubricant, liquid, lube for core drilling. All kinds of stuff. And that's probably not even a third of it. But the point is, you're going to need at least 22 feet across, and probably more like 32 feet. Because I really don't even think 2 elevators could handle it all. Maybe 3 could probably do it. Because you're always going to have scientists and workers and other people coming, up and down. And then the heavier stuff like rebar and tie wire and concrete forms, that's going to require the biggest, heaviest elevator, which will probably take, one side. And then as you go, and let's say, for instance, that, let's say the night crew, and you would have to run this operation 24 hours a day. Otherwise, you're never going to get any depth, because when you run through solid rock layers, it just takes time to drill through it. When you're going through sand, you go real fast. When you go through, but remember, if you hit a sand layer, your people who form your rebar and put your molds and mix your concrete and pour it and take test pours and everything else, they gotta, you can't get too far ahead of them for safety reasons. So you have to let your crew always keep up with you. And depending I don't know how thick sand layers are, but if it's, a 50-foot sand layer, you would have to slow down and let your crew keep up with you. But anyway, the point is, like after the night crew finished, and the scientists might go down real quick in the morning and take a look around and see what they found. And then, of course, after the samples were taken to the surface, they would be looking at those all day long and trying to find and understand what they could. The point of all this is to learn and to understand something, do something very unusual, but also beneficial in many ways. And it gives you a geologic record over time. It will give you fossil records. And one of the other biggest advantages will be locate the borehole in and you probably have two of these. Locate one in an area like around Memphis. A lot of seismic activity there, and they had a earthquake event. What the heck is the name of it? Back in 1811, the New Madras fault, I believe is what it is. One of the things is to get way down in there, one of these quakes that's real deep, and find out what is it? What is with the structure of the place? You might very well, on some of these boring adventures, run into water tables. You would have to have certain setups that you could block water holes or seal off the unit. You might have to have a sealed head, 10 feet above your head whenever you're drilling. So, well, I'm not sure, but there are certain things you would need to do, possibly. Maybe not that. You don't want to, I don't think you want to do that. But people who have drilled in the ground and run into water situations, they could probably advise you on the best thing to do with that. But the idea is to get down to where around these earthquake areas and try and find something unusual that we've never seen or understood before that might begin to answer some other questions. Okay? Could be simply water moving underground and creating hollowed out areas that then a roof of an area falls. A huge chunk, maybe a quarter of a mile wide, falls 100 or 200 feet and hits and creates a shock wave. There could be all kinds of very unusual but incredibly informative things we haven't even begun to understand, but you're not going to figure it out sitting up above ground and never doing anything like this. This is a massively interesting thing. But the other thing is about in the mornings when the scientists come down and start looking around, and the cameras could be taking a sectional views of the wall carefully, in a sequence. Always starting at north and going to your right, I'm assuming, to the east and around south and west and back north. But it could be taking, floor to ceiling pictures and seeing the sediment layers, the colors, what material it is. All kinds of this information could be gathered as you go. So it's not like you're spending money to bore a big hole you're never going to do anything with. First of all, from the very foot you start, every single foot all the way down, 20 miles if you get that far. It might be something you run into, you have to stop. But every foot you go is going to be a more thorough record of geologic stuff, and you're going to win. No matter what you do, you're going to win. This is not a losing proposition. One should be in an area where it's seismic, a lot of seismic activity. That would be more dangerous to bore in such an area. But I'm thinking there's something in those areas we do not understand that hopefully we would run across and find. That's one of them where you'd want to put it. The other one would be in a non-active area as far as earthquakes, but could hold some interest depending on its location. And I do believe geologists and scientists could come up with another location. But I think that's something that would really be a good thing to do. It would be something that I think everybody would benefit from it. Educators, school children, scientists, geologists, earthquake people. Everybody will benefit. Just an idea. Thank you.